Welcome the academic forum of the new university and the University of Udine on EU economic and social recovery after COVID-19. My name is Jernej Letnar Černič. I'm a professor here at the European Faculty of Law of University in Ljubljana, and I'll be moderating, chairing today's event. I'll be joined with three distinguished speakers, colleagues from Udine and Ljubljana: Professor Dr. Elisabetta Bergamini, Dr. Francesco Deana, and our own Professor Dr. Matej Avbelj. Today's forum is organized and is taking place under the auspices of ongoing cooperation between the new university and University of Udine. Our two universities have long-standing cooperations in organizing summer schools, in exchanging both students and also professors. I'm very glad that we are able to meet at this academic forum. Unfortunately, we are not able to meet in person. Some years ago, it was a breeze to drive from Ljubljana, from Nova Gorica to Udine. Nowadays, there are many administrative hurdles which one has to comply with to come from Udine to Ljubljana or other way around. But nonetheless, I'm glad that we are able to meet in such a way through Zoom webinar. Today's topic will address a very topical issue of EU economic and social recovery after COVID-19. For sure, COVID-19 is still ongoing and will be with us for many months and years to come. But nonetheless, it's time to start talking about the last phases of the pandemics and what comes next. What comes next concerning economic recovery, but also what comes next concerning social recovery. Today's forum will address some of these issues which fall within this topic. Some of you know that the European Union and its member states some months ago agreed on a holistic, full-fledged economic and social recovery package, which is called Next Generation EU, which includes 750 billion temporary recovery funds in different areas, from economy to social dimensions, to solidarity between the member states, but also solidarity in the society. In today's forum now, we'll address what are the experiences of both Italy and Slovenia in this regard. What are the plans of the Italian government to seize this opportunity to use these funds for different objectives, and what are objectives of the Slovenian government to make use of these funds in order to ensure that there were not the decrease in economic growth and economic crisis will not be as deep as it could have been without this temporary recovery instrument in the form of Next Generation EU funds. And before we dwell into, just a few notes of caution, few household orders. Today's forum will proceed in the form of dialogue, and debate between myself as a chair and the speakers. And I will ask the speakers 2 rounds of questions concerning the topic, and then also during the forum, you're also welcome to, as an audience, to address the topic yourselves by posting a question or comment in the chat room of a Zoom application, and I will thereafter read the question, the comment to our speakers, and after those 2 rounds of questions are done, we will also answer the questions from the students, from the audience. All right, so without further ado, let's start with the forum. And the first question I would like to pose to Elisabetta. Elisabetta, which are, in your opinion, the major challenges for EU economic and social recovery after COVID-19? Perhaps, Elisabetta, if you can concentrate on social dimensions of these challenges, perhaps you could address the challenges concerning the EU Migration Pact, which is still under discussion, under negotiation. So which are, in your opinion, the major challenges for such recovery?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for organizing this debate. I'm really glad to have this chance to cooperate further. I'm also here to represent our Director of Department, Professor Elena D'Orlando, who unfortunately wasn't able to join us today, but she asked me as Delegate for International Relations to present her formal greetings. So this one related to COVID is really kind of hot issue for all of us. And I think that the European Union has already done some really interesting kind of intervention, like the one you said on Next Generation EU, which clearly is focusing on the economic side of the recovery. The economic side is really so much relevant. I think that the economic side is not only giving this kind of aid, of economic aid to undertakings and to subjects inside the European Union. But what will become really relevant is to have a new approach to the single market and to competition law. And also, I think that in a way, we could say that there are some topics, some issues which risk to be considered as a class B, as not so relevant, as not so really useful right now. So the main risk, I think, right now is we do take care of everything that's related to healthcare. So the European Union clearly focused on an immediate support to the national health system. And I think that was great by the European Union. This interest in research, in development of new COVID vaccines, in access to vaccines, clearly, which will hopefully make it possible for all of us to meet in person next time. But it is also relevant for us right now that we focus on the human rights approach, on the social needs for all of us. So this human rights approach means that we need to remember that human rights protection is one of the main pillars in a way, because, well, we all know that the European Union is not focusing on human rights, but human in all the policies of the European Union. So in all European Union policies, we also have to take into account the need to protect human rights. And this is something that we missed a bit in the last year. Well, many countries consider that due to the COVID-19 pandemic, what was more relevant was the economic approach. What was more relevant was to put barriers, to stop migrants, to prevent any kind of risk, which is clearly in a situation of emergency, the main focus. But now that we have been living with this emergency, and we have been living with this emergency for more than 1 year right now, which wasn't expected at first, all the measures which were approved in some countries in particular, which were limiting human rights, have to be considered in the light of this long crisis, this long pandemic situation, which is not getting, well, hopefully getting better, but not yet so quickly getting better to say, okay, in a month we will be able to stop all measures and to go on further. So what I wanted to tackle, to precisely consider is that the field of human rights and also the related, which is, I consider them intertwined clearly, the related field of migration law, of asylum policies, of border controls, should get a new kind of attention in this new situation. So we all know, as also was remembered before, that there is this new package by the European Commission, this new approach on migration and asylum policy, but I think it will be really relevant for the member states to really focus on the new approach, because migration clearly was hindered in the last year. There was a decrease in the number of asylum requests, there was a decrease in the number of migrant workers, but also due to the situation which was created at national level, we will need economic migrants. We will need economic migrants also to cover the losses which happened inside the countries. So we need economic migrants, and even if we don't need them, we will face a new situation in which new asylum requests, new, maybe not necessarily economic migrants, but migrants coming from a situation in which the pandemic was particularly severe, was particularly hard, and so a new flow of immigration will probably start quite soon, and we need to take care of this new situation. I really do think that the idea of Fortress Europe, which was an idea which was really so well known in the 90s, presented in the 90s when migration law was inserted inside the treaties. So we presented the idea that Europe was dealing with migration as a fortress. And a fortress means that you create your own barriers to migration, and you consider that the European Union is working on migration in order to prevent migration in a way. We do not need to prevent migration, we need to regulate migration, to take into care all the situations in which human rights protection is endangered abroad. So unless we really manage to focus on this problem of, on one side, protect human rights in the European Union and in all the partner countries, and on the other side, to take clear steps in order to create a new approach of the European Union towards migration and asylum policy, unless we reach have another kind of problem after the pandemic crisis will cease or will at least get better. So I think I will just say a few words right now, and then maybe I will go into more details in the next rounds.
Well, thank you, Elisabetta, for your comments. You're right, economic recovery cannot go without social recovery, particularly as we know that ongoing pandemic particularly attacked human life. Both our countries, Italy and Slovenia, have been very much affected by loss of human lives during the pandemic. So, of course, a human rights approach to recovery, it's not only necessary, but it's also giving attention and focus on human dignity of individuals, of people who live in the EU. Francesco, I mentioned before in the beginning that the EU member states adopted a full-fledged package to help the economic and social recovery member states. Could you perhaps share with us some good practices and recent developments on how Italian government, Italian state decided to spend this package?
Sure. First of all, dober dan, buongiorno to everybody. Thank you for organizing this really interesting webinar. I'm very happy to be part of it. And I'm very happy to share with you what's happening in Italy, what happened in the past month. But first of all, let me stress that Italy's recovery will not be a simple and immediate operation. 1 year ago, the pandemic has rapidly spread in Italy. We've been the first Western nation to be massively hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. Our national health system has never had faced a challenge so hard in the past, and the economic and social context was also put under great pressure and still is. So in the last 13 months, to counter economic negative consequences of the pandemic, the Italian government issued 3 sets of general measures by means of a 3-law decree: the Cure Italy decree, the Liquidity decree, and the Relaunch decree, for an allocated amount of more than 450 billion euro, if I'm not mistaken. The main measures implemented aim primarily at increasing financial capacity of the national health system, aimed at supporting employment and workers' income, aimed at stimulating financial credit and loans through the banking system and through the use of a guarantee central fund. And they aimed to implement a system of tax credit in order to stimulate private investments. Moreover, Italy adopted many other specific measures to help specific productive sectors, or to help specific companies or specific categories of professionals. And these measures were issued under the temporary framework for state aid measures adopted by the European Commission in March 2020. So under the temporary framework, the public support, mainly in the form of direct grants, aim to partially compensate the reduction of revenues as a result of the coronavirus outbreak. So the aid schemes aim to address the liquidity needs of the beneficiaries and help them to continue their activities during and also after the outbreak of the coronavirus. So we can say that the policies implemented by the Italian government to contrast the negative impact of the pandemic aimed primarily at, let's say, sustaining consumption and sustaining employment. But despite the announced intention of presenting a structural package of measures to relaunch investment in the country, the intervention on the supply side relied mainly, if not exclusively, on credit guarantees and tax measures. So innovation and technology, especially applied in education, were almost excluded at all by the major action taken by the government, unfortunately. We hope that things can change in the future, in the near future, thanks to the approval of the Italian Recovery and Resilience Plan. Because as any other member state of the European Union, in these weeks, Italy is focused on the preparation of its National Recovery and Resilience Plan, which is a requirement for unlocking European Union funds. So the general objective of this plan, of this national plan, of its reforms, is to make Italy a fairer, greener, and more inclusive country, with a more competitive and dynamic also and innovative technology and economy. So the plan, the national plan, mobilizes about 300 billion euro 210 billion coming from European Union Next Generation program, which are also complemented by other funds allocated with the 2021-2026 budget planning of the European Union. So the national plan defines action and intervention to overcome the economic and social impact of the pandemic, finally acting also on the country's structural nodes and facing the structural issues affecting Italy in the past years, and not only in the 2020 crisis following the coronavirus outbreak. So we are facing the environmental, the technological, and the social challenges of our time, but also of our recent past. So the relaunch action is connected to three strategic axes: digitization and innovation, ecological transition and social inclusion, and competitiveness of economy, quality of work, and people lives. So green and digital transition will be the core of the project, of the Italian project. However, at the same time, the plan's priorities include sectors and objectives that are not merely related to the impact of COVID-19 crisis, because they are linked to structural deficiencies, as I was saying a few moments ago, structural deficiencies of our country. For example, gender equality, young people skills, abilities and employment prospects, increasing the regional rebalancing and the development of southern Italy, reducing bureaucracy, reducing constraints that have slowed down investment and reduced the productivity of our country. So the national plan is a very complex, and we really hope that this could be the moment in which we start to face a structural development and a structural improvement of the condition of our country.
Great, Francesco. Yeah, challenges are systematic in general in Italy, but also beyond. Many of member states of the EU have similar structural challenges, especially concerning introducing green economy, concerning digitalization, and also making the labor market more inclusive, you know, to facilitate the access of younger people to the labor market. The other hand, no, here in Slovenia, the Slovenian government, Matej, has adopted in the past year several laws which introduced economic assistance for businesses, for autonomous employers, which try to help them to overcome this crisis. But nonetheless, despite this assistance, the Slovenian GDP in the last year fell from 4 to 5% on the previous year, 2019, and the forecast for this year for economic growth are about, depending on the organization which predicts, which submits forecasts, it's from 2 to 5%. Slovenia is also taking over the presidency of the Council of Europe in a few months on the 1st of July, and the second half of this year certainly will be challenging both on Slovenian level but also on the EU level, because the EU will be moving to this economic and social recovery, how to implement this package which the member states adopted some months ago. My question to you, Matej, is how, in your opinion, how well is Slovenia prepared to lead the Council of the European Union concerning economic and social recovery in the second half of 2021? We know that the government highlighted it chose improving resilience of the EU for future challenges as one of the major themes of Slovenian presidency. But as an external observer, how would you assess the Slovenian capacity to lead the EU, in this economic and social recovery in the second half of 2021.
Thank you, Jernej, for this question. Thank you for organizing this event today. I'm extremely happy to be here also with my Italian friends. It's been quite a long time since we met last in Udine. I always keep great memory of Italy. I spent my best times there, in academic times in Florence at the EUI. So I always, whenever I'm going somewhere to the west of Ljubljana, I always see myself almost driving towards Florence. So I hope that all this mess of the public health crisis in which we are living at the moment will be soon somehow past us, and that again we'll be able to meet in person and also to engage further in our mutual academic activities. I will put your question into a little bit broader context. You are right. This is one of the main Slovenian priorities during the presidency. But speaking about the broader context, it is of course clear that the agenda of the presidency is more or less set in advance. It is set in advance, but due to the necessity of things, due to the necessity of situation in which we presently are. It is set in advance because presidency is part of the Troika, so Slovenia is not presiding alone, but it's part of the broader program, and it's part of the broader program, the political program of the European institutions, which have, to my appreciation, responded to this particular crisis much better than they did in the past. And here I think the notion of crisis is really important, and Elisabetta is absolutely right when she's pointing out that the present public health crisis is just one amongst many that the European Union has been hit by over the last decade. We tended to say that European Union is a crisis management process, but as we can see now, this crisis are really taking over the management, and I hope that in some due time that nevertheless we'll be able to reach some stability. That we won't be just responding as caretakers of just moving from one crisis to another. But as the saying goes, every crisis is an opportunity, and I think this crisis in particular is an opportunity. Also, Francesco pointed out that this crisis sort of, and also taking into account the experiences that we had with previous crises, especially if you remember both the migratory crisis and the economic crisis, there the states of the European Union reacted more or less extremely selfishly. It was on Greece to solve basically the border problems, and when Greece couldn't solve its own border problems, the migrant currents were let in, and then the domino fell until basically Angela Merkel settled the problem in a way that it accepted the majority of the migrants coming from Syria at the time. And the same story was with the economic crisis, where the countries that were hard hit by the economic crisis, of course, they bore some responsibility for that as well, but there were structural problems in the way the European Monetary Union has been devised without the fiscal union. And there, I mean, those arguments just couldn't prevail, and it was due to austerity, those member states were more or less left upon themselves. And I think this public health crisis, which affected everyone, not just those member states who are worse or better off in economic terms. Of course, those who are worse off in economic terms, the impact of the public health crisis was also much more hardly felt. But since the public health crisis affected everyone, we are going now through this example of European solidarity. And I think it was extremely important that the budget of the European Union was inflated, and that this budget for the next generation Europe, which almost basically doubles the budget of the European Union, that this was put in place so that this will be really used, if it is used, right, for an economic breakthrough of our countries for the future. the measures that Francesco described that are being currently implemented in Italy, of course, those measures, only that on a bigger scale, right? In Italy, parallel very closely the measures that have been taken in Slovenia too. The measures that were adopted, they can be somehow structured in two groups. There was a bunch of ad hoc measures. So when the crisis struck and you know, the countries were unprepared, the government simply reacted to the crisis by pumping money into the economy. And this money could be pumped into the economy because it was clear that on the European Union level, now there will be some sort of a safe zone, some sort of a bummer or some sort of resource from where this money could come. And as Jernej indicated, indeed, the Slovenian government adopted, if I counted correctly, 8 ad hoc anti-corona packages, in which it helped basically all the strata of society. Of course, always someone is more help than another, and there will always also some conflicts and cleavages about it. But you know, the forecast for the Slovenian economic downturn during the crisis was 7%, and as you mentioned, it was much less than that. It was just a little bit over 5%. And in terms of unemployment, basically the government was managed to stall the unemployment at a relatively low rate. So for that, of course, a lot of public money was spent. The Slovenian public debt increased again, and it's now on 80% of the national GDP. But at least the crisis was sort of, in economic terms, was suspended, so that even though the economy was basically closed, most of the people kept their jobs, most of the people kept their financial resources to ensure their own well-being. Of course, now the question is how to get forward, right? How to move on. And the measures, again, that Francesco described, again, they're completely analogous here in Slovenia. It's green, it's digitalization, it's, making an economic breakthrough, making our own societies more creative, competitive, and, again, going back to the Lisbon strategy, making the European economy one of the most competitive in the world. But the question is to what an extent that will be actually possible. And I think that pretty much depends on, and here I will also stop, on the kind of confidence and trust that is developed in a society. To the crisis, if we can learn something from the crisis, is that those societies, those political communities that were able to preserve a large degree of social trust, those countries are going through the crisis better than the others. And also, in order to progress economically and overall socially, and also in terms of human rights, that Elisabetta correctly so insists upon, it is really necessary to ensure and protect and really cherish the trust in a political community. And in Slovenia, I have to say, this has been a major problem. Over the last year, we've lived here in a society where the public affairs were extremely toxic. The cleavages were exaggerated, exacerbated. So it's not just the public affair, the public health crisis that has struck us, but it's also a kind of a complete collapse of a public dialogue in the political society, and especially in the political spectrum. So in that respect, life has been hard, and it remains open how this can be mended for achieving this kind of progress, economic and social progress for the future. But I might add something more on that later on as our debate unfolds. Thanks, Jernej, for now.
Thanks, Matej. Yeah, you're right. The tensions were very much omnipresent in Slovenian society, but not only in Slovenian society, also beyond many other countries. There were protests, demonstrations against the measures. If I'm not mistaken, in Italy some days ago, again, there were protests against different measures adopted by the government. So the crisis, not the pandemic, is clearly triggered discontent, no, among the population. And as all of you, Elisabetta, Francesco, Matej, you mentioned these structural packages, economic assistance, both from the EU side and also at the national level, try to, to respond to these different tensions, discontent among the businesses, individuals, different groups in society, vulnerable groups. Now, second round to question, I was thinking that I address them to what Matej mentioned just now, how to move forward. How to move forward in the next years. What are the major challenges in developing these effective measures to respond to post-COVID-19 economic and social crises? And we know at this stage, as we are in the EU, both in Italy and in Slovenia, the vaccination is still ongoing. Now, about 15 to 18% of population across the EU got the first doses of the vaccine, and the recovery very much so is connected to the systematic vaccination. And Elisabetta, you mentioned earlier in your comments that human rights in the social dimension is very much important, for the economic recovery of the EU, and the solidarity is very much important. And here I'll throw out one data which I just read some hours ago concerning, you mentioned, Elisabetta, access to medicine, access to the vaccines. Often the EU has been criticized that it's not very, it doesn't show solidarity towards the neighboring countries, towards the third countries, towards the global south during the migration crisis. But if we look at the data concerning, the vaccination production, in the last month, since December, the data, the EU data, and then those of UK and United States of America are quite interesting. For example, the vaccine which were produced in US and UK by different companies, the governments imposed a strict ban on exports of vaccines to the third countries across the borders, the British and US borders. Whereas in EU, 46% of the vaccines which were produced in the factories which are based in our countries were exported to third countries. Some of them, some millions of doses were exported to the global south countries under this COVAX scheme, which helps global south countries access to the vaccination. So my question to you, Elisabetta, would be: has the EU, its member states, adopted the right approach? Because we know both in Italy, in Slovenia, and elsewhere, populations are very critical that the vaccination is going too slowly, and that the governments should speed up the whole process. Is this solidarity, which the EU clearly showed in the last months towards the global south and other countries outside Europe in this global vaccination effort, is this something that we should be proud of, we should build upon in the post-COVID economic and social recovery, or did the member states of the EU perhaps chose a wrong direction in this regard, from the point of view that if those vaccines would have been used in the EU, then perhaps also the social recovery and economic recovery would be quicker than it is at the moment. So, Elisabetta, please, the floor is yours.
That's a really interesting question, and it's quite difficult to give an answer at the level of the question. The point is that I think it's really hard to strike the correct balance between the different needs. Because clearly, on one side, we have the European Union external relation approach, which has been promoted throughout the years, which is also an approach which focuses on cooperation with third countries, We have plenty of international agreements, association and cooperation agreements. We always try to use these agreements also to spread resources that we have inside the European Union, but also to grant, for example, training in order to have trained employees coming as migrants inside the European Union. So the European Union always had this also focus on external relation, not only on external relation, clearly. So the main aim of the European Union is an internal market, but in reaching this European single market, we also took into consideration the need to have strong external relations. So what happened really during this pandemic crisis is that the European Union accepted to be involved in the COVAX plan, as you mentioned, and the COVAX plan, I think, was a great effort by all member states involved in order to spread the resources for vaccination also to countries which had no possibility of having on their own an economic access to vaccination. This also led, at least it was in the news, to some problems of countries then selling the vaccines which were granted through this plan to economic, even European buyers using these resources clearly in a misleading and an abusive way. So this clearly is to blame. And also this situation is reinforcing the situation that we have in Italy at least, but I think it's happening also in other countries of Eurosceptic political parties or Eurosceptic movements, associations, people considering that we just give the vaccines to third countries and they're selling, and so it's not a good solution. But the difficulty is the correct balance. I don't know how to strike it, clearly, because if I did know how to strike it, I probably wouldn't be here discussing with you, but doing it in a way. But what is really relevant is we cannot say the European Union should close and just take care of the single market of competition law on the inside. Why? Because our single European market is inside a much bigger world market. So we cannot pretend we are the only one in the world and we are just a self-sufficient economy who doesn't have to deal with other countries. So in a way, by helping these countries which are more in need to be helped, and this is being done, we are also balancing the need for these countries to grant a better level of social development, of economic development, also in order to balance the situation with the more developed countries. So we are not an island. We cannot just deal with what is happening inside Europe, we also have to deal with what is happening outside Europe. So clearly, for example, there is a Team European Initiative, which was approved in April 2020, which is still ongoing. And under this initiative, 40.5 billion of euros were used to support partner countries in emergency. And I think this was a correct approach for this idea that we cannot just close inside the European Union. It is also a way to prevent an excessive migration from countries from which these migrants may just be led to think that coming to Europe is the only solution to all their problems. So in helping these countries, we are also in a way influencing the future migration flows. And on the other side, we also need to better develop the digital competencies inside and outside the European Union. And I also wanted to stress what is contained in the European Skills Agenda. And in the European Skills Agenda, there is this need for training. And need for training, which is a need for training inside, clearly, the European Union, in order to acquire better competencies. As Francesco was saying, we are really trying to implement this agenda inside Italy, and I think all the countries are trying to implement this agenda because we realized how much we are lacking from this point of view. So we need to use our resources in order to have a better situation inside Europe, but also to balance, to share these resources with other partner countries, other developing countries, in order for them to better face the situation of pandemic crisis. So how to strike this balance? It's not to me to decide, but I really do hope that the European Union will manage to find, using also these solidarity principles that we have among member states, we always had this principle of cooperation between member states. It's one of the pillars of the European Union, this idea of going on cooperating and sharing resources together. Unfortunately, the UK decided not to go on following this solidarity principle, which I think is a shame. And so we go on further as European Union, and we go on persevering in this idea that the solidarity principle is relevant on the inside of the European Union, but also in external relations.
Definitely, Elisabetta, the challenge is how to find the right balance between those two objectives. But surely solidarity is not only one of the objectives and principles of the EU and its member states, but also perhaps necessity, for the future of the EU, both in internal market, but also in its external relations. Now we have one question from the audience. Our colleague, Professor Goras Justinek, posted one question in the chat concerning digitalization, and Goras points to one of the challenges EU has at the moment, Italy, Slovenia, and also beyond, perhaps EU is lagging behind the most developed financial markets concerning the digital development. I was listening recently to one podcast where one of experienced Slovenian investor, he was saying, the journalist asked him, where would you invest? Would you invest at any of the European stock exchanges, or Slovenian or Zagreb Stock Exchange? And he gave very clear answer. He said that there is no added value at European stock exchanges. All the new ideas and creativity are to be found in the United States, in North America, where all the biggest technological companies are based. Goras also mentioned here his comment that out of 10 most valuable companies, 8 come from the United States, 1 from Korea, and perhaps 1 from Europe or China, perhaps. So, Francesco, my question to you would be concerning this general question about challenges. How to respond to challenges in this economic and social recovery. How would you say that Italy is digitally prepared to overcome, to use these funds which are now or will be available in the EU to transform itself to a modern digital-based society?
Well, I don't know if Italy is really ready right now to instantly become a digital innovative country. What I surely share with you, with also the person who made the question a few minutes ago, is that digital response to COVID-19 is one of the main priority objectives for the European Union, both of economic and social relevance. Digitalization is not just an economic dimension, has not just an economic dimension, is also a social phenomenon. And if we want to restore, develop, and strengthen the European Union single market, we need to push on digitalization and digital responses. The past showed us that the key to recover in the post-crisis world is to make transformational moves and take into account long-term goals. So the current COVID-19 crisis is a good reminder for all of us that companies' level of digitization coincides with both their resilience and their competitiveness in a new business reality. And the same goes for our society as a whole. So the more we are digitized, the more we are resilient, and the more we are competitive. So what the crisis highlighted in these months is how advanced robotics, for example, can enable companies to continue operating factories in spite of containment measures, in spite of closing economic activities. We have learned how machine learning, data analytics, artificial intelligence increases a company's agility in responding fastly to drastic changes in supply and demand. So unfortunately, the level of Europe's digitization is still lower than that of the United States and China. All tech giants are based in the US or in China, and those big tech companies that we had in Europe were acquired. The most promising European startups were acquired by Americans, by Chinese in the past years. So the digital transformation will be a main driver for Europe's future competitiveness. And this means that it has to be central to any recovery plan for Europe, for Italy, for Slovenia, for everyone. So now is the time to promote innovation, capacity, automation, cybersecurity, data protection, artificial intelligence, etc. What the European Union needs is a new regulatory framework, is support for research, is a favorable investment climate. So all of these factors are central to ensuring Europe's digital competitiveness and to strengthen its innovation capacity and technology development. So what can the European Union do to take full advantage of opportunities of digitalization? I don't know. Probably the most general objective is to promote and to protect our digital and technological sovereignty. So the ability of the Union, the ability of its member states to be independent, to be autonomous in the digital world. To act independently, we need to promote innovation. And at the same time, we need to protect ourselves from the economic and the social influence of non-European tech companies. So we have to promote the ability of national and European Union legislature to ensure compliance with digital legislation. So the European Union must invest in supporting this phase of digitalization of industries and society. We need to increase public funding. for the widespread establishment of networks, high-quality networks, cyber-secure networks, 5G networks. We have to increase digital skills at all levels, as Elisabetta told us. Before we have to push on promoting digital skills in our society. These networks, these skills will assist both businesses and citizens in achieving this digital transformation. So we need to invest. And we need to invest thanks also to new rules that the European Union is called to implement, to adopt. So in the light of these remarks, probably we must welcome, we must praise as a first significant step the initiative recently taken in the last December by the European Union, where the European Commission presented a package of measures that are aimed to update the European Union regulation of the digital sector. If I remember well, the Commission issued 2 proposals for the adoption of regulation, European Union regulation. The first one concerning digital services in order to enhance security, transparency, access to online services. And the second one concern digital markets. So it deals with commercial and competition aspects. So we must welcome this initiative of the European Commission, but just as a first step. It is not sufficient, it's not enough. We have to push strongly on digitalization. We need strong investments and innovative legislation that could make easier to promote this new phase of the European Union society.
Great, Francesco. Yeah, I can concur. We can concur with you. Many valid points. You're right. No, the digital transformation will be a challenge in the years to come everywhere in Europe. And perhaps the main reason for that is that digital transformation challenges the status quo or things as they are at the moment in our societies. Just think of different startups from in the area of logistics or even health system, higher educations, transport, and so on. Those are, those digital initiatives are not welcome. They go against the status quo in most of the European societies. Definitely there will be a challenge, and perhaps one challenge is also, you already mentioned that all the major technological giants are based in Asia or United States, and most of them, they were created bottom up. Whereas there's also my question to you, Matej, whether this top bottom approaches, from the top to the downside, can really make incentives that Europe will transform itself digitally. And the question is also whether the European countries, Italy and Slovenia, have capacity to do so. Whether they have human resources which are there to proceed with this digital transformation. Before I give you the floor, Matej, let me just address one further question which was posted in Facebook comments. I was told, and the commentator, the participant, is highlighting that the recovery will not be as optimistic as the government's predict, and he he says, and I quote here, "Printing money never has a neutral effects on the economy." End of quote. My question to you, Matej, is: Slovenia, is the European Union resilient enough to proceed with this digital transformation? Does it have capacity? Which are the major challenges which you see in which could be hurdles in introducing, implementing these recovery programs?
Well, thanks again. Well, here I agree with Francesco, who has spelled out a number of advantages that the digitalization might bring about and shall bring about, hopefully. But at the same time, we have to be aware that as with any economic revolution not in the sense of changing of ideological order, but of the means of doing things technologically, right? Any economic revolution, digital revolution included, has always its winners and its losers. There will be businesses, there will be lots of workers, lots of individuals, communities that will be, of course, squeezed out thanks or due to digitalization from the existing workspaces, because they won't be needed anymore. And that, of course, will produce a number of social tensions, as we've had these tensions in the past with the first industrial revolution, second industrial revolution, etc., etc. So here really the time will tell how this will go, and it will be bumpy with a lot of social conflicts. And here I put trust in the European Union, not just because of its economy of scale meaning that bigger economic things, and especially these kind of revolutions, bigger entities can do more easily together, but I think also in the politics of scale. And this brings me to your question whether the digitalization and all these processes or the responses to digitalization can be done top down, as you described it. And here I think the functioning of the European Union is precisely the opposite to that. It is clear that the European Union cannot even start functioning top down simply because it lacks political resources and it lacks economic resources, because economic resources are kept with the member states. The states are pretty much unwilling to engage into the redistributive politics. You know that in normal times they were willing to share 1% of their GDP, as it were. So 99% of the European money is still kept in the national fiscus. 1% is only on the European level. So what can European Union do? And I think it's been doing relatively well, is to engage in this play of a federal laboratory, because this, I think, the European Union has been. You pull some money together, you pull some money to Brussels, and then you basically ask, as is now being done, you ask the member states, keep with the programs, come with your programs, come with your ideas, attuned to your national particular circumstances, and draw this money back from Brussels in order to achieve particular European goals, following the principle of subsidiarity on your national territory. So I think this idea itself, the idea of laboratory exchange of good practices, clamping down on bad practices, and the idea of competition as such, fostering pushing us, the states, to compete with each other for the European programs and to be better. I think this works as a stimulus. The fact, however, is if you are part of this laboratory, it is clear that not everyone has started with it's not a level playing field. Not everyone has started with equal opportunities, and the member states are in different positions. And there is a huge risk that despite that more money will be shared, there will be more solidarity on the European level, due to the different starting points and due to different social, economic, initial circumstances, digitalization will produce different effects in different member states. For that, it will need to be compensated, because if there are too big discrepancies between different parts of Europe, you cannot have a single market, and let alone a political union and all the rest that is necessary for that. So there are certainly huge challenges still ahead. But I'm confident that we can face it. And we have several comparative advantages with other major foreign powers. In comparison to China, we are a democracy, which China is not. And in comparison with the US, we have been able to preserve a sort of welfare state model, keeping a lot of people afloat, keeping a lot of people above the poverty the poverty line. So I think we should be investing more in this European model, and also seizing the digitalization as an opportunity and to turn it into our advantage.
Thank you for this positive note, positive message, Matej. It's very important nowadays, in these times, after a year, Europe has had, due to the COVID-19 crisis, so many lives lost, so many jobs, unemployment has increased, many companies have ceased to operate. It's important to look positive in the future, and I agree with you that there are competitive advantages which the European has in comparison with other global powers. So I would suggest, dear colleagues, that we end on this positive note. Dear Elisabetta, Bergamini, dear Francesco, Deana, dear Matej, thank you again for your comments, suggestions, very direct messages to our students, to the participants, on how the EU economic and social recovery after COVID-19 will look and should look. There are many challenges ahead, but nonetheless, we can all agree that we have to look positively into the future, and to play on the strengths of our member states of the European Union. I'm also very glad, very content that we reignited the cooperation between our two schools, between the Faculty of Law of University of Udine and European Faculty of Law of New University. Today, students both from Udine and Nova Gorica, Ljubljana have been present at the academic forum. So I hope this initiative will become traditional, and also we plan with the colleagues from Udine future events also in the forms of summer, winter schools for all our students. So thank you again, Elisabetta, Francesco, Matej. Stay healthy and all the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.